Chapter 89. Belch recalled the incident in just a few minutes. This experience for him was a series of thrilling situations that happened like a roaring ocean wave. After the fear of just escaping death passed, he also had a feeling of refreshment. Seeing Siddle ignoring him, Belch felt a little wronged, but under Siddle's cold gaze, he quickly shut his mouth and obediently stood aside. Siddle looked at Charlie, looking from top to bottom, using a little more force. The arrow in her hand drew a bloody mark on the man's neck skin. But Siddle did not interrupt Charlie. She raised her eyebrows, indifferently saying, "Continue." Continue to lie. She really wanted to know how Charlie would justify what he had done. Siddle still clearly remembered that this man held a gun in his hand, took advantage of the moment when Belch was kidnapped, and wanted to threaten her. Although she liked to be humble, she was not someone who could endure losses. Now that Charlie was in her hands, Siddle no longer had much patience, so of course her methods were not very gentle. Although the gun originally belonged to Charlie, the arrow also belonged to Charlie. But perhaps because she had pretended to be a terrible bully before, Siddle now held Charlie's weapon and pointed it at him. Not only did she not feel ashamed, but she also intended to criticize the arrow for not being sharp enough. In the battle with Vincent, he had been beaten to a pulp by him. Now Charlie could only silently grit her teeth, suppressing the discomfort in her heart, and smiling flatteringly. "I swear to God, everything I said came from the bottom of my heart. I never intended to harm innocent people, it was just that I was eager to get Penelope out of this dangerous place. After all, my fiancée is a weak woman. As a husband, I have to take responsibility for the safety of my family." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Belch, who was listening from the side, couldn't help but interrupt. "Your fiancée is even better at fighting than you. I think she should be the one worrying about you." "Charlie, you brat, I've pinned you." Siddle heard Belch's interrupting words. The girl sneered slightly raised her hand to take the arrow away from Charlie's neck, leisurely twirled the long, thin arrow between her white fingers, played with it for a while, tilted her head in thought, then suddenly laughed and said, "The kid said you were lying, did you hear that?" Even without the threatening arrow pointed at him, Charlie didn't dare to stand up. In his opinion, Belch was not simple. He looked easy and harmless, but he could sneak into the killer's lair, quietly waiting for an opportunity to strike, and the most important thing was that when he was with Belch, he always pretended to be honest. After escaping from the wax museum, Charlie turned around and wanted to put the machete he accidentally picked up on Belch's neck. As a result, he turned around and just as he raised the machete, he saw Belch raising the bow and arrow in his hand. The eyes of the young man covered in wax were cold, pointing the weapon at him. Look, he did not resemble a 16 or 17-year-old boy at all. As for his sister, it went without saying. This pretentious, but actually very cruel boy could be tamed and made to be as docile and quiet as a quail. A glance was enough to make Belch's legs start to tremble. Charlie didn't know that Belch's trembling hands and feet were normal when he was with Siddle. But now he didn't want to think about it anymore. Without winning the belt, he admitted that he couldn't defeat the two sisters. Knowing the current situation, he bowed his head and begged for mercy. At this moment, faced with Siddle's seemingly gentle question, Charlie didn't dare to be careless. His mind quickly worked, trying to find a reasonable explanation to clear up the doubts of the two people in front of him. But before he could answer. To be more precise, the girl didn't give him time to answer. Siddle turned the arrow in her hand a few times. She had just casually asked a question. Seeing that Charlie couldn't answer right away, she just smiled calmly, holding the arrow firmly in her hand. The next moment, the silver triangular arrowhead stabbed hard between Charlie's shoulder and neck. Along with his painful screams and curses, blood soaked the white inner shirt, mixed with the rainwater and quickly stained half of the man's body. "Fuck." Charlie frowned, gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with anger, raised his head and said, "I just want to live. I can tell you too what I've been through. Aren't you guys doing this too? Harming others just to give yourself a way to live?" He didn't think he had done anything wrong. But Siddle ignored him. The girl raised her eyebrows, her eyes cold and lazy. She pulled out the arrowhead embedded in Charlie's flesh. The shiny silver triangular arrowhead was covered in blood, pressed against the middle of Charlie's forehead. Blood flowed out. Charlie even saw drops of blood sliding from his body down the tip of his nose. Siddle tilted his head, seemingly thinking about something, then slowly brought the arrowhead to his temple. The cold, sharp sensation of the arrowhead slowly moved across the skin. The blonde girl smiled at him without any malice or other emotion. "Continue," she said softly, her tone seeming to have a hint of joy. Then she turned to ask the boy beside her, "Next time, stab here, okay?" The arrowhead was pointed straight at Charlie's temple. "Belch." He looked back with horror and confusion. "Why did you ask him that?" He looked like someone who could make a choice about this. Moreover, saying it like that would really make people misunderstand that the cousins were perverted murderers who enjoyed torturing others. Charlie's body trembled slightly. Apart from the family's massacre game, this was the first time he felt extreme fear. He opened his mouth, a thunderclap rang out, a bright lightning flashed on the man's pale face. Don't kill me." He finally couldn't hold it in anymore, fell down, took a deep breath, and said in a low voice, "I will tell everything." Charlie closed his eyes tightly in pain, his Adam's apple moved slightly. After a while, the man lowered his voice and began to tell his background. "I come from a wealthy family, a leader in the board game business. Our family has been made a fortune printing poker cards since World War II, and we're still making a lot of money from this type of game to this day. But because my family got rich from gaming, we have a tradition. If an outsider wants to join the family, they have to play a game. They have to draw a card from a small black box before the wedding. That black box contains dozens of cards, each corresponding to a game. The game content in the card is good or bad, but as long as they complete the game, they can join the family, become a member of us. And my wife, Penelope, drew the worst card from the black box before we got married. Hide and seek." Charlie laughed self-deprecatingly. He swallowed slowly, looking up at Siddle and Belch. "This game is for outsiders to play hide and seek with all the family members at my old house. The deadline is from midnight tonight until before sunrise tomorrow. During that time, Penelope must hide in the old house, and everyone in my family will go find the person hiding." He was silent. After a long while, he continued, "Then, if they find Penelope, they will kill her and sacrifice her to the devil. So what if the deadline has passed and Penelope is still not found?" Charlie narrowed his eyes and shook his head. "No one knows what will happen if the deadline expires. Because in the past, everyone who drew that card died under my hands and the hands of my family members." Belch couldn't help but ask, "Why does your family have such a strange tradition?" Charlie said, "I heard that my great-grandfather was just a sailor. Once at sea, he met a mysterious gentleman. After betting with the mysterious Mr. Lobel, my great-grandfather won, so Mr. Lobel gave my great-grandfather a black box, saying that the black box could protect my family's fortune. Since then, my great-grandfather's life has been smooth sailing, starting from scratch, and until now, our family has accumulated countless wealth. But the price is that we have to guarantee him forever. Every new member must go through Mr. Lobel's permission to join the family, to enjoy the wealth he has bestowed upon us. So, outsiders have to play card drawing. Those who draw good cards can join smoothly. Those who draw bad cards can only be sacrificed as a reward to Mr. Lobel for protecting our family. And the bad card," he smiled bitterly, "is only that hide-and-seek card." Siddle. She fell silent. It seemed that Penelope's luck was really bad. Right before she married into a wealthy family, she drew the only bad card out of dozens of cards. "My family will abandon Penelope." Charlie closed his eyes in pain, "but I swear, I love her, and I can't live without her. I didn't intend to marry her at first, but Penelope couldn't accept living with me for the rest of her life without a title. So I could only tell her about it, and try to convince my family to let her draw the card a day in advance. Who would have thought that she would draw the hide-and-seek card? Belch couldn't help but say, "You and your family haven't received any education? Don't you find that old-fashioned story about a devil protecting fate funny?" Even though he had never heard a lecture, Belch, who had been seriously studying for more than 10 years, still had to ask in disbelief. He couldn't believe that a big tycoon on the list of the richest people in America would believe in such ridiculous things. Siddle glanced at him, and Belch immediately fell silent. Charlie laughed coldly. "I don't believe in such ridiculous things either, even though they always say that you can't disobey Mr. Lobel, otherwise something terrible will happen. But there can't be ghosts in this world. But my family won't believe it," he sighed. "Moreover, to tell you too, I have also participated in those massacres. My family has dozens of people, and there are always some unlucky people who draw bad cards. But now, the victim has become his wife. Charlie can't accept that because it involves his own interests. In the previous massacres, he actually enjoyed it a lot. But of course he couldn't say such words." Charlie coughed twice and said, "I originally planned to buy a girl with the same body shape and hair color as Penelope, and it was easy to find a suitable one on the black market." He didn't dare to hide it anymore, and said dryly, "I spent a lot of money, and the seller quickly found a girl who met my requirements. It's just that the transaction location was in a remote town. I escaped from my family's surveillance, lied to them that I took Penelope on a last date. In fact, I went with her to pick up someone. I planned to kill that girl, then let Penelope change clothes with her. Before midnight, I would return to the old house, arrange the scene. While playing hide and seek, I had to turn off all the surveillance devices. That was also my chance to fake everything. I could destroy the girl's face, then hang her body from the ceiling, or hang it from the ceiling fan. In short, any corner where I could hang the body. Before the game started, install a device to break the power switch. In the dark, I could completely fake the scene where Penelope was killed, fell down the stairs, and had her face disfigured." "But you still haven't picked up the girl from that trafficker." Siddle spoke calmly. Charlie froze. After a few seconds, he nodded, and replied absent-mindedly, "I really haven't gotten the goods from the traffickers." Before they could reach the town, the storm grew heavier and heavier, and rocks and debris blocked the road ahead. Charlie and Penelope could only turn back, intending to see if they could find a suitable girl in the city. But unexpectedly, the way back was also blocked. After Charlie finished explaining, Belch was stunned. "So that's how it was, then. Where did the girl in his trunk come from?"